Hey guys, welcome to another video. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Now, we have been doing a series, on, featuring the or focusing on the Black church and some of the main issues that, that we see today, the root of those. And so we're going to continue that series. So what I'm doing now is parking that just for a moment. And then I want to do a video on this particular topic here that we're about to discuss. And then we'll return to that because, as I said, I think in the last installment of that series, it's going to now at this point in the series going to branch off into different things it's all related to that particular topic. So like I said, again, we haven't dropped the ball and going to leave that just sitting there. We're just now, I'm trying to figure out which angle or which direction I want to go, because there's so many different directions with that, and doing it in a way that's engaging, because when you're getting into topics like this, when you start going into ancient Greek culture and all that other stuff, I'm gonna be honest with you do lose a lot of people with that. So, so just trying to piece that together and figure that out. But in the meantime, I do want to talk about this topic here. And what we're going to talk about in this video today is about where did this whole thing of this apocalyptic, way of thinking, when did we begin to see that? When did that begin to come about? And I was just thinking about this one day, and I said, when the European explorers, when they came here to what they called the New World, were they at that time thinking that America is going to be destroyed? Was that their was that their mindset? And then I was just like, that doesn't really make sense. Why would you have such great optimism about the New World, but in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, it's going to be destroyed anyway? So, so I was like, I don't really think, that they were thinking that this new project that they were building called America was going to be something that ultimately was going to be wiped out and destroyed by God, the Bible God. And so, I looked into it and I was right. No, they weren't thinking that at all. In fact, they thought of the New World as something else. So what we're doing is we're going to pull it up right on ChatGPT. Now, the reason why I like using this, and I was sharing this with my wife, Nicole, with ChatGPT. See, for me, traditionally, what I do, I'll pull up different books, and showing you, okay, on page such and such, it says this, on page this and that, whatever. But I'm going to be honest with you. I do know that a lot of people really don't go that deep. ChatGPT, it gives you the links and the sources, or it mentions names. So, so that you can search these things on your own and other means, and, you can verify all of it. So ChatGPT, for me, and what I do here, is just a great way to kind of get to the point so people can see it. And if they're interested, they have all the key points that they can do their own individual searches on, and then they can explore the topic further. So I just like it because it makes it easier when you're presenting something and helps you get right to the point. So anyway, so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what my findings were on this. And then I may interject from, every now and then on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Find my mouse here. Here we go. So, all right, let's begin. All right, so at the time of arrival of European settlers in the New World, apocalyptic thinking was a significant aspect of European religious and cultural life. This worldview was largely shaped by the Christian eschatological tradition, which emphasized the expectation of the second coming of Christ, the final judgment, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil, as outlined in the book of Revelation. Many settlers interpreted their journey to the New World as their encounters with indigenous people through this lens. Here are the specific examples and explanations. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to also see how this ties into immigration as well. Immigration, as we talk about immigration today. Millennialism, Hope I'm saying that right. And the New World, expectation of Christ's reign. Many Europeans believed that they were living in the last days before the return of Christ. Millennial groups, particularly influenced by Protestant reformers, often saw their efforts to establish new societies in the New World as part of God's divine plan. For instance, Puritans in New England viewed their settlement as the creation of a city upon a hill, a model Christian society that could usher in the millennium, a 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. Now, as we continue, in this, I will be showing you some specific examples of this. This is just like an overview. Okay. All right, let's go on. So when they came over, they saw the New World as the city on the hill. What's the city on the hill? Well, that's Jerusalem. They saw the United States as a new Jerusalem. All right. The New World as a stage for prophecy. Some saw the discovery of the Americas as a fulfillment of biblical prophecies, such as those in Revelation, which mentions the spread of the gospel to all nations. The New World represented an opportunity to evangelize and bring indigenous peoples into the Christian fold, further advancing God's plan. Apocalyptic interpretation of indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples as the lost tribes of Israel. Some settlers and missionaries speculated that the Native Americans were the lost tribes of Israel, whose conversion would proceed at the end times. This belief tied to the discovery of the New World, to the unfolding of biblical prophecy. Let me stop here because, again, the people who have short attention spans, they will run with this and say, see, they knew that these people, these were the indigenous people. They're part of the lost tribes of Israel. See, they knew already. Pay attention to what was said. The Europeans implied that. They said that. It wasn't the indigenous people. They wouldn't run around saying they're the lost tribes of Israel. It was the Europeans that was speculating that. And so when you hear people today trying to, say, see, they knew, or whatever, I guarantee you will not find one piece of literature or record where indigenous people are actually claiming to be the lost tribe of Israel. Now, when you look at their language, you will, in some of these tribes, you will see some traces of, people say Hebrew, it's or Phoenician, you will see some of that. But coming right out and saying that they are the lost tribes of Israel, that was Europeans saying that kind of stuff. It wasn't them saying that. So I want to be very clear with that. Okay, let's go on. The New World as a stage for prophecy. Some saw the discovery of America as the fulfillment of biblical prophecies, such as those in Revelation, which mention the spread. Oh, I already read that. Sorry. Back down to point 2 at the second point under point 2. Sorry. Conflict and judgment. European settlers often interpreted the violent conflicts with indigenous peoples as part of a cosmic struggle between good, which represented Christianity, and evil, non-Christian paganism. This mirrored apocalyptic battles depicted in Revelation. All right, so yeah, they felt like the Europeans felt like it was on them to convert these lost tribes of Israel, so to speak, into coming under the Christian fold. The Reformation and apocalyptic thinking. Protestant Catholic rivalry. The Protestant Reformation intensified apocalyptic fever, as Protestants often viewed the Catholic Church as the whore of Babylon, described in Revelation. English settlers, for example, saw their colonization efforts as a way to escape the corruptions of the Catholic Church and to establish a pure Christian society. So, yeah, so you had people then who believed that, Rome was in fact, was this Babylonian, system that was going to fall. And that's where you see the early signs of that Rome was seen as part of this, they were the evil ones, and you're going to see as we go through this, how it just changes over the years. let's see, the pulpit as Antichrist. Protestant reformers commonly identified the Pope as the Antichrist, and the New World became a symbolic frontier where the true Christian faith could flourish, free from papal influence. Okay, number 4. So again, you see that what would become America, or the Americas, was seen as paradise. It was seen as the promised land. It was seen as, this space that God had ordained to be the resting place of this Jerusalem and all of that. That's how they saw America then. All right. Specific examples of apocalyptic views. Christopher Columbus himself had an apocalyptic outlook. In his letters and writings, he claimed that his voyages were part of God's plan, and believed that he was fulfilling biblical prophecy by discovering new lands that would bring about the eventual unification of the world under Christianity. John Winthrop and the Puritans. John Winthrop, a key figure in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, gave the famous City Upon a Hill sermon, emphasizing the apocalyptic mission of the Puritans to create a godly society that would serve as a beacon for the rest of the world. All right. So again, they viewed America as a fulfillment of prophecy, where America was going to be the safe place. All right, let's go on. The biblical apocalypse and colonization. The Americas as Eden or the wilderness. Some settlers saw the New World as a new Eden, a place where humanity could start anew and prepare for the second coming. Others saw it as the wilderness described in Revelation 12:6, where the woman, often interpreted as the church or faithful Christians, would flee and be protected from the dragon for a time. And then the next point is colonial hardships and tribulations. The challenge of colonization, famine, disease, and conflict were often interpreted as trials or tribulations that would purify the faithful and prepare them for Christ's return. And then it goes on there. Okay, so let's move on to this part here. Then the next question I had, so let's see. So let's recap here, and then we'll go to the next thing. So again, we have these Europeans. These are the people that brought you the Bible. Okay. This is one of the hardest things for me to get people to see and to understand. I'm talking black folks specifically, who hold on to this ideology that somehow that the Europeans, the ones that enslaved you, the ones that took you from your land, somehow was under some type of mysterious mandate to make sure that they perfectly preserved your history, your culture, your cultural identity, and all of that. Put it in a book. They would beat the heck out of you. They would rape you and torture you. But at the end of the day, once they were finished, they somehow, some mystical force came upon them and forced them to say, here's your history. Now take it. You know what I'm saying? And I don't get it. The logic doesn't make sense at all. It really doesn't. But you have a lot of our people who cling on to that and believe it. And, and then you're going to have some people, even after hearing that, they'll say, well, I get what you're saying. What they did was they actually put some things in there. Not everything is accurate in the Bible. They put some things in there, to kind of confuse us and all that. Listen to what you're saying. Listen to what you're saying. If you're trying to destroy, if you're trying to eliminate a people that that's a threat to you, why would they even put it in a book in the first place and make it accessible to you, regardless if it was mixed with lies or not? Why would they do that? Because anybody would know at some point when they're reading this, they're going to discover who they really are. Do you understand what I'm saying? So why even take that risk of going through all of this? Instead, just, if you're going to keep a record of it, keep one record of it, put it under the ocean somewhere, surrounded by a bunch of missiles or something, and then keep it there. Why would you tease people with that? Why? But what happens is people just make things up. They want to make things up because this is the desperation of people who want to believe in something. But that makes absolutely no sense. So how is this connected to the next area that we're going to touch on now? Well, you got a lot of people, when I'm on YouTube or whatever, I see the usual suspects on here that are always warning about the last days, the last days. Oh, the last days are coming. The last days are coming. We're in the last days right now. They were saying that when I was little. They were saying that when my parents were young. They were saying that when their parents were young, so forth and so on. And this goes all the way back to what we were just talking about. The last days, this whole ideology that at some point in time, the earth is going to be completely destroyed and eliminated. This goes all the way back to ancient Mesopotamian area. When you look at even their belief systems, when you look at Zoroastrianism, when you look at some of these ancient belief systems, they all have at some point or another believed that at some point that the earth was going to be completely annihilated and destroyed, and it was going to be, that was it. And the narrative is usually the earth is completely destroyed and there is a replenishing of the earth. And the replenishing is usually done by those who are worthy enough to make it to that level. And we actually are seeing that now when you think about it. With this whole, that took place some years ago. They've been saying that, hey, listen, we're overpopulated right now. Something needs to be done, and steps have been taken. I have to talk abbreviated here because of the platform that we're on. But you'll see this throughout history. These discussions have been going on for a long time, but particularly you'll see this within religion. It's baked in religion that at some point in time, something has to happen that will lead up to the total destruction of the earth. And that the good people, the ones that were faithful, are going to be the ones that are going to be taken up. Well, so as someone who's been in Christianity and as someone who's been in the Hebrew space as well, I can tell you that, it's interesting to sit back and to watch how Hebrews, as much disdain they may have for Christians, they are literally repeating the same thing as Christians say when it comes to this kind of like, they don't call it rapture. They may say that it's the gathering or something like that. He's going to come and gather us, but it's still rapture ideology. They're just renaming it. And so, so you're going to see that this rapture ideology isn't something that was all the way from the beginning. It did, we just went back to when the European settlers came to this country. And you already saw, even at that point, nobody was talking about a rapture at that point. It wasn't, they just believed that at some point in time that Jesus was going to come back and he was going to see America and going to say, oh man, thank y'all for getting everything set up for me. Now I can come down here and then set things up, and that's it. That's how they perceived the second coming of Jesus. It wasn't this taking away and I'm going to bring you to another land kind of stuff. It wasn't anything like that. It was simply that it was on them. It was their charge to prepare the earth for his coming. You understand what I'm saying? Now, when we start getting into this, where did this whole rapture thing come from? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull that up and let's take a look. Okay, all right, let's see here. The doctrine of rapture, as it is commonly understood today, was not a prominent or developed idea at the time of the European settlement of the New World. Early settlers and theologians in the 16th and 17th century did focus heavily on apocalyptic themes, but their eschatology, hope I'm saying that right, centered around traditional Christian teachings derived from the book of Revelations, with emphasis on Christ's second coming, the final judgment, and the establishment of a millennial kingdom on earth. That's where America comes in, right? Early eschatological views. Point one, no rapture concept. The settlers' eschatology did not include a separate rapture event in which believers would be taken up to heaven before a period of tribulation. Instead, they believed in a general resurrection of the dead, followed by the final judgment as outlined in traditional Catholic and Protestant theology. Focus on millennialism. Many Protestant groups of the time were millennialists, believing that Christ would establish a 1,000-year reign on the earth. Some, like the Puritans, saw their efforts to establish a godly society in the New World as part of preparing for or ushering in this millennial kingdom. The emergence of the Rapture doctrine. Now let's get into this. The Rapture doctrine, as distinct from the traditional eschatological beliefs, did not emerge until the 19th century. Its development can be traced to the following key figures and moments. Okay, so John Nelson Darby, many of you are very familiar with him and his name. Darby, and this was in the 1800s, in the 1800s. Darby, a British theologian and a key figure in the Plymouth Brethren movement, is often credited with popularizing the concept of the rapture. He developed the idea of dispensationalism, a theological framework that divides human history into distinct periods or dispensations of God's dealing with humanity. In this framework, the rapture marks the moment when the church is removed from the earth before a 7-year tribulation period and Christ's return. Darby's teaching spread through his writings and speaking tours in Britain and the United States. So this is where this comes from. The Scofield Reference Bible, and we're getting into the 1900s. The Rapture doctrine gained significant traction in the early 20th century with the publication of the Scofield Reference Bible. This annotated Bible, meaning that he added some notes on the sides, right? This annotated Bible, written by American theologian C.I. Scofield, included dispensationalist interpretations of Scripture, making the rapture a mainstream concept in evangelical Christianity. And then the last point, it said influence of revival movements. The 19th century revival movements in the United States provided fertile ground for apocalyptic and dispensationalist ideas. Preachers emphasized themes of judgment, repentance, and the imminent return of Christ, which resonated with rapture theology. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, yeah. So here's some of the specific names. Now I'm jumping back to what we were talking about earlier, the early the European settlers that came. These are some specific names, and I'll just mention these, right? Cotton Mather, he was a Puritan minister, theologian in New England, and was deeply influenced by apocalyptic thinking, his belief in the imminent return of Christ, and saw the New World as a place where divine prophecy would unfold. And then they mentioned his works there. Roger Williams, this is another person, the founder of Rhode Island, had an apocalyptic outlook tied to his rejection of the established church. He believed the church was corrupted and that the New World offered an opportunity to create a pure expression of Christianity, a key step towards preparing for the second coming. The Fifth Monarchists, although primarily active in England, the Fifth Monarchists influenced apocalyptic thinking amongst settlers. They believed in the imminent establishment of Christ's kingdom on the earth, which would follow the fall of earthly kingdoms as prophesied in the book of Daniel. Some Puritan settlers in the New World were inspired by these ideas. Let's see here. And I'll just read this part. Relevance. Let's see. This group's millennial expectations align with those of colonists who saw their efforts in America as part of a divine plan to prepare for Christ's rule. And then this last one, missionary efforts and prophecy. Bartolomé, if I'm saying, de las Casas, a Spanish missionary and advocate for indigenous peoples, Las Casas viewed the evangelization of the Americas as a fulfillment of the Great Commission, which some interpreted as a prerequisite for the second coming. And then they mention Franciscan and Jesuit missionaries. Many Catholic missionaries in the New World saw their work as hastening the apocalyptic vision of global conversions. To Christianity before Christ's return. All right, so there you go. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. So again, this idea that, oh my gosh, America is about to crash and burn. The world system as we know it is going to crash and burn. This earth is going to be destroyed. And, he's just going to, the clouds are going to open up. Before he does this, he's going to suck up all the good people, the faithful people. He's going to suck them up. And then everybody that's remaining here, those are the people that's going to be destroyed. This is a relatively new concept. This is not something the people, the early people who are a lot closer to, who basically are responsible for giving us the Bible, because the Bible in of itself, even though we went through this already, going back as far as the Septuagint, which was written in Egypt, written primarily a lot by Greeks who helped put this together, who were pulling from different resources that was in Egypt, in Alexandria. Right? That's where it was coming from. And they were pulling from their own inspiration, mythologies and stuff like that. And that's where we get the Bible. We've gone through this. Okay. And so that got passed along and spread throughout Roman Empire. The Roman Empire from there, of course, went as far as up in the UK or Britain. And from there, in the Roman Empire, they were responsible for ultimately putting together the Bible that we have today, right? And and so that's how we get it, right? And so by the time the settlers came to the New World or whatever, they had Bible in hand that was put together years and years and years and years and years by their own people, all right? It didn't fall out of the sky, right? It came from them. And so from there, they came in and set the standard as far as how people are to see and believe the world and all that kind of stuff. They are the ones who at that time, when you look at that history, they did not believe, they did not interpret the Bible in saying that at some point that all the earth was going to be destroyed. When they looked at America specifically, they looked at America as the exit. It was the way out. It was the safety zone. Right? That's how they initially interpreted. The writers, the people who gave us the Bible. I have to keep saying this over and over again. It wasn't until much later when we get Darby in the gang and then some other people who started shifting it a little bit to now they start bringing in the rapture stuff that everything's going to be destroyed. Everything's going to be wiped out. Right? And including America, And so all of that is relatively new. And so you have all of these many offshoots that are still coming out as a result of that. So when the Hebrew, fast forward, when we get into the Hebrew Israelites, let's see. So that was, let me go back here, because the Hebrew Israelites, that started when we did our study on that, late 1800s, early 1900s. Let me see. It wasn't Darby. What was it? Schofield. So this is right around the same time. So early 1900s, that's when Hebrew Israelite movement really started, slowly started becoming a thing, starting in, well, I'm saying Harlem, but the early stages of that was seen in the Caribbean. And I think it was it Jamaica? I think it was Jamaica, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say it was Jamaica, but you got to go back. Yeah, one of the studies we did. And then that was like that was the early stages of what we call today the Hebrew Israelite movement, the early stages of it. Then it really started taking formation, once, you had a lot of these immigrants that were coming from places like Jamaica and going directly to New York, specifically Harlem. And then from there, that's when it really started expanding and becoming a thing, right? Where they started seeing themselves as the people of Israel, people of the book, that kind of thing. And so they were borrowing, just like a lot of these other religious groups who throughout history, always engaging in what we call syncretism, where they basically are borrowing from other theologies, ideologies, and things like that to formulate their own belief systems. So here we are today in 2024, it's still happening where a lot of what many people will say they believe, I'm talking about religious folk, it's not just, I'm just reading the text and that's it. It's who you're using or what systems you're using to interpret that text. You understand what I'm saying? But here's the thing that makes this even crazier and more complex. The text itself is a result of syncretism. It's borrowing from other cultures as well. So here you got a text that is largely borrowing from different cultures throughout the centuries, right? And then you got people who are reading this, and then they're coming up with their own interpretations based on other syncretisms, other things that they're trying to synchronize with, and they're making up their own on top of that. You see how crazy this gets? So the conclusion of all this is, do you see, someone may ask, okay, I heard everything you said. Okay, so do you believe that America is going to crash and burn and, there's going to be this judgment and all that's going to come down and all of that? No, I don't. I don't. I do believe, however, when you look at history, you do see phases of kingdoms rising and falling. You'll see this happening all the time. Of course, you had the time of Greece, right? You had the time of Egypt. You had the time of Rome, right? And you had the time of Britain, these different things. So you see these kingdoms rising and falling, even though their influence over time shrunk. They still were able to embed major pieces of their culture in the places that they conquered. You know what I'm saying? Like Greece and Rome, for example. We're in 2024. The American government is still very much pulling from ancient Greece in how we set up our government. But it's not just American government. You see this in other governments throughout the European space as well. Rome, same thing. When you think of Rome, how they, when it comes to religion, all of these different churches, whether they're denominational or non-denominational, it doesn't matter. They all center their belief systems based on what came out of Rome. You know what I'm saying? And so I think the same thing is going to happen as far as America is concerned. I think over time, you're going to see, and we're already witnessing now, the influence of America is shrinking, right? However, our influence, the American influence, is seen all over the world. So we're going to continue to see that. But I do believe that what we know today as the America, as far as its great influence, like this, the pit bull of the world or whatever, that is going to change over time. And I do think we're right in the middle of seeing that change take place. So the America that many of us grew up in thinking and believing, and this was our reality, I think over time we are seeing that is going to gradually change. And that's what I believe. But as far as this whole notion that there's going to be a big fireball that's going to come out of the sky and it's going to wipe out everything and all of this other stuff, if that does happen, it ain't going to be because of the Bible God. It's going to be because of these wicked people who are doing that on themselves, like dropping bombs on populations and things like that. And just to make a point so that they can replenish the earth. That's when we look at history, we do see at least a lot of times people talking this talk that this thing must happen, that the earth must be wiped clean so that a new generation of people can come forth. We do see tons of people have been talking like this and writing about this stuff for years and years and years. And I think we're going to, at some point that may happen. But to say that some type of Bible God or deity or whatever is going to bring that on our own, bring that on his or her own, there's no precedent for that at all, and these are things that I'm learning and I'm coming to accept, because for a good part of my life, I wouldn't have imagined me coming to these conclusions now. But once you begin to start using your brain, the brain that you was born with, and you start looking at things in a truthful and honest manner, you'll begin to see these things for yourself, and so I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts on this. You can put that obviously in the comments below. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys take care, and I'll see you again soon.